the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Well, something may spark your memory as well.
Okay.
A lot of these things that I find, I'm hoping that they'll just generate discussions. And
right.
If not, then you cut them out and we move on. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. So.
Okay. Should we get into it then?
Let's go. Let's get into it. I'm excited.
Week 3. We're week 3 of October.
I know. And Jeff is still alive.
He's still
Although
alive.
I will say I've been having some serious anxiety dreams about being chased at night. So to the both of you, I hate you. Thank you very much. 2 nights in a row, I had zombie-related nightmares.
So what causes your heart to race more? When you're carrying a heavy package or when you're watching one of these movies?
When somebody, the other day, I had 4 sets of tires and a big cast iron outdoor smoker.
4 sets of like
what?
4 sets of tires. Yep. So 2 each. And then there's 111-pound smoker. And I am just cursing these people. I hope they don't have their windows open because I am not happy.
For anybody that's new, that you don't know, that you may not know this, Jeff is a UPS driver. So we should do this every week, but we salute him for making that sacrifice for all of us.
So thank you for all of you who are stuck home and ordering crap. Although, if I could have gone to Jeff Bezos' house this week and punched him in the nose, I would have. Because Amazon Prime, I had quite a few customers who came to me. I'm really sorry. I'm just going to let you know right now. I went a little nuts during Prime Week. And I'm like, oh, boy, here we go.
Oh, yeah. Prime Week.
Yeah.
They gave me $10 off. How could I resist going?
Even my wife jumped on it. And she doesn't usually buy stuff. But, yeah. Yeah, people are buying Christmas already.
Actually, I bought the Blu-ray copy of a movie that we're going to be covering next week, which you will find out about later in the episode.
Wow, if that's not a tease, I don't know what is. All right, before we get into news, we have 2 little items I want to talk about housekeeping-wise, internal. One of which I know in the back end, if you listen to this show on a regular basis, we spell out all of our social media information on the back. But I do want to mention our Twitter account because it's been kind of hot lately, and we owe that to Jim because I went on there today and I was looking at some of the fun stuff that you're posting.
Not that she probably even knows who we are or anybody does that likes something on Twitter. It's just a random thing that you happen to see maybe, or hey, maybe they do listen. I don't know. As we know, anybody that's been listening for a long time, I am a big fan of the late 70s horror film Tourist Trap. It was the birthday of one of its stars. And so Darcy from the Joe Bob Briggs show on Shudder posted on her Twitter feed a very happy birthday to Tanya Roberts, who not only was in Tourist Trap, but denizens of 80s cinema will know her from Sheena, Queen of the Jungle.
Yes.
And also she was a Bond girl in A View to a Kill. So it was her birthday. And Darcy, of course, being horror-centric, posted the trailer of Tourist Trap. And I could not let that go. I had to make a comment.
You had to seize on the moment.
And since we actually did an episode on Tourist Trap along with Ready or Not, I had some ready-to-go artwork that Jeff had created for that episode and threw it up there and said, love this movie. Much thanks to WOR Channel 9 New York for scarring me for life. Something to that effect. And lo and behold, who liked the tweet but Tanya Roberts herself? So thank you, Miss Roberts, for acknowledging us. Good. And my 13-year-old self especially. Thanks.
If only she had sent you a picture while riding a zebra.
So yeah, so it's
that's
fun.
very
We get
cool.
these little fun acknowledgments every once in a while on Twitter,
Yeah.
and I'm very appreciative of that every time it happens.
And our Twitter handle is, if I'm correct, TMI_podcast 2018.
Sounds right. Yes.
Okay.
I'll
If
go
not,
with
you're
that.
going to someone else's site. All right,
Look for
very
the
cool.
popcorn bucket.
There
That's
you
what we
go.
always
Look
say,
for the
right?
popcorn bucket.
Look for the popcorn bucket. And usually I pin the tweet that I pin is whatever episode is out.
Gotcha. So it sits at top.
So yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
If you go to Twitter from listening to this episode, you will most likely see a pinned tweet of Vampires versus the Bronx. And of course, am I going to reveal it already? We already did last week.
We already did.
Candyman.
Candyman. Yes,
Don't
that is
say
this
it
week's
3 more
episode.
times, Jeff.
Well, you're not getting me to say that 3 times. I already covered every mirror in my house.
Does it count if you
me?
don't? We're going to say it a lot. So does it count if you don't say it in succession? Because
I think you have to be looking in a mirror. You can't just say it.
What about a screen? I am looking at myself right now.
Oh, that's true.
Well, you guys don't have to worry. I'm the only one who lives in Chicago.
We'll all be dead.
Is that it? Is he
I don't
like
think you
stuck
have
there?
to. He's a ghost.
Is he stuck there? I was going to ask. Right. He can't get on like a ghost train or something. And
yeah, we'll get it. We'll get into the mechanics of Candyman a little bit later on.
All right. I got one more housekeeping item, which is next week, Jim and I are actually coming out of our COVID bunkers, and we will be at the Incredicon in Wappingers Falls, New York, at the town hall. This is
Christina's hometown.
Yes. Any reason for you to jump on a plane and be here? You know, what'd you say? Only 870 miles away?
Yeah, 870 miles.
Yeah. Start walking now, baby. So October 24th. These gentlemen are trying to get something going. Obviously, all these conventions have been shut down. They're able to pull something together. It's going to be an outdoor event. I think there's a rain date in November, but I just checked the weather and it looks like it's going to be sunny and the high of like 65. But we will be there. We'll have a table and we'll be bringing our wheel of nerddom. Yeah. And if you're in the area,
we're not shaking hands, so don't be.
We're not shaking hands. We are waving from afar. We put together some goodie bags, so all you have to do is answer some movie trivia questions. You can get some TMI swag, and that also includes a couple of hand-signed books of The Ghost Tree by our lovely host, Christina Henry.
Yep.
Graciously offered them. You do have to land on the horror category and answer correctly in order to get these books right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and some of these are softballs, so it will be very easy to get a copy. If you are an aficionado of horror or films in general,
I was able to get
for you
all of them right.
Okay, good.
So if that tells you. But, you know, this is just a fun thing that we were doing before all this crap went down, to just get out and meet with people who may or may not listen to us. Just get our name out there and have some fun.
Now, Jeff, I wanted to ask, because one of the planned categories will be Star Wars. Yes. And I just felt unqualified to write those
I could easily write. You want some hardball questions? Or we have to go?
It's kind of like the bankrupt category on Wheel of Fortune. Like, Star Wars.
Star Wars. I'm never going to get these. I'll stay within the canon, though, because this was mentioned on a previous show when we had our guest, Jack Hammer. I actually wrote trivia questions and hosted an event in which Jack went up against Jake Lloyd, the actor who played young Anakin Skywalker, in a Star Wars trivia question, and they got none of my questions right.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. At one point, Jake Lloyd's like, I was in episode 1. Like, all right, dude. Fill in the blank. Luke. He goes, come on. So, yeah, that's cool. So 10-4, Wappinger Falls Town Hall, October 24th. Swing on by. And now let's get to some bigger news. Let's go a little bit wider, which is Governor Cuomo of New York State has announced, are you ready for this? That most movie theaters outside of New York City can reopen on October 23rd. 25% capacity. Isn't that awesome? That's great, right?
It is for you guys if they had announced it a month ago, because now all the films have been taken off the schedule for this year, except for Wonder Woman in December.
But at least we'll still get that. Look at the silver lining. At least
wait. So you're saying we're getting our movie theaters open, but there's nothing to be shown. That's basically Cuomo, little too late. And I think that's only after Regal started putting all those nasty notes up on their marquees.
Well, and AMC just announced that they don't think they'll be able to stay open, period, if they can't get new films to the theater before the end of the year.
Yeah. So I have a line of success, because we talk about this every week, what's happening in this industry and the domino effects. So you're right. If Cuomo had stepped up a month ago before Regal said, guess what? We're just shutting all 700 plus of our theaters globally because we got nothing to show. Mm-hmm. We can't get, our two big markets, New York and LA. And you wonder if LA is now going to follow suit with Cuomo. But again, it's to what? So, right. Oh, okay. You guys going to reopen. They're like, but that doesn't make any sense now.
Right.
So, yeah, it's good news in a poopy sandwich. But so you talked about AMC, and they are the only major chain outside of like your Music Box and the privately owned movie theaters that are still scrambling. They're showing older movies, but they're getting, Jim and I, we talk about our story, jumping the border to Connecticut to go see some of the newer films. And I think this is very interesting that they are now offering up full rentals of theaters starting at $99. You can go to AMC, you can have a private screening for one or up to 20 people. Mm-hmm. And I went through the list, and the list of movies that are available are kind of sketchy. A lot of them are like horror movies. Obviously, they're riding on October, and maybe next month they would change it up. The 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back, which I think would be cool. I would love to pull something together as a promotional event for this, for this show. People like win tickets and come. I don't think we have enough fans in our area to pull that off.
That would be an embarrassing turnout, I think, if that would serve to destroy our egos if we did that.
It's only 20 people at max anyways. So worst case,
we can fill seats with family members, right?
Yeah, well. But here's the interesting thing, which is it's price tiered, because I dug a little bit deeper. So Tenet and New Mutants are both on there because, Christina, you immediately said, will they let me watch Wonder Woman for 84? That's not a choice.
But Jeff, you said that you wanted to watch Tenet again. You can do so every weekend.
So all by myself.
Until December.
So what you have to do is you have to go to the AMC website, you pick your movie, and then you pick your date, and then a representative will get back to you. So obviously, you can't have two people commandeering the theater at the same time. But what I want to talk about is the fact that, they're selling this as a $99 win-win. But if you want to do Tenet or New Mutants, it immediately jumps to like $149 up to almost $400. So it's an option because right now, again, these studios and these theaters are floundering. So I find it interesting that they're trying new ways to bring people in, to keep them relevant. So we'll see. I would love to know if somebody actually follows through with this and rents out an entire theater just so they can finally see New Mutants.
What I'm wondering is once New York theaters open, if the California theaters open, will the studios then revise their plan and put stuff back on the schedule?
I doubt it. I don't see that happening. That's too much scrambling.
I mean,
but then there's no competition. If they were to pull back,
but what is what are the behind the scenes machinations of that to then suddenly be like, hold on, we now have an opening. Let's get these out there.
The thing is like their marketing's already been blown to smithereens because normally they're planning, they're marketing out like so far in advance. Like you talked about with Wonder Woman 84, Jeff, like there were Doritos bags with characters on it and stuff. You can't stop that machinery now. Yep. So at this point, like, is it worth it for them to put something back on the schedule, say around Thanksgiving, run a bunch of ads, TV ads, like during football games and stuff, and then hope that people turn out? I don't know. I don't know.
I could see them taking Wonder Woman, who is still on the schedule for December,
Yeah.
and bumping it back a couple weeks and taking advantage of the open Thanksgiving Day weekend.
Yes, yes.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
But these other ones that they've now taken off and said, you know what, we're just going to show this in April or May. I don't know. So that's kind of the theater response to all this. But here's what the studios, and I find this really interesting because this could be a new model. Did any of you even know that Eddie Murphy was making a sequel to Coming to America?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Apparently, it was supposed to be released in March, something around those lines. Paramount just sold it to Amazon for $125 million, and they will split the revenue. There's two major tie-ins with McDonald's and something else, but it looks like Amazon's going to stream it starting December 18th. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a VOD price or if it's just going to, I would assume that they probably are going to charge at least $19.99.
$125 million. That's
yeah.
an
I don't know what the
amazing-
budget. I don't know what the budget was on this, but at least it's not sitting there for 6-8 months. So
Yeah.
I find this very fascinating that the studios are now making these deals with these streaming services, and I guess Netflix had an opportunity as well. So yeah, you may start seeing some of these not big tentpole movies, but these movies kind of slide right off the chart of theater going experience and go right into one of the streaming services.
But only if they can make enough money to justify it, and not
Right.
everybody's going to get $125 million
No.
from Amazon, which is a crazy purchase price. Now, the first Coming to America was not the kind of movie that had a huge budget. It's
Correct.
not,
And that's not, I mean, all the original cast members are coming back. Eddie Murphy is executive producing this thing.
Is it John Landis? Is he directing?
I don't think it is Landis, but it sounds like Eddie Murphy, approved this deal because these streaming services they're desperate for new content. So this could be like just, you're saying 125 million, who's going to pay that? But that might be a bargain with the next go around when all of a sudden someone's paying 250.
I mean,
it's like picking up a quarterback in the NFL. Give you a 5-year deal for $85 million, and people are like, that's ridiculous. And now 2 years later, these guys are getting $250 million. We'll see. This stuff is like changing on a weekly basis. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more. Mad Max Prequel is going to center on Charlize Theron's character Furiosa, and they just cast Anna Taylor-Joy, who we just saw in New Mutants.
In New Mutants, yeah. No Tom Hardy.
It looks like it's going to be Chris Hemsworth and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II too. Are going to be co-stars.
So
apparently no Tom Hardy. No, because it's a prequel, so it's her story.
Right. And obviously, I heard a lot of stories that it was a contentious shoot. So I don't know the specifics, but it wasn't a good time had by all.
You're talking Fury Road or this?
I'm talking Fury Road. Yeah.
Really? Well, George Miller apparently wrote this backstory almost simultaneously while he was writing Fury Road. So it's not like he's jumping on the bandwagon after the fact about the popularity of this character. So Fury Road, I thought, was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, agreed with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm excited. We'll see. I don't know if Miller is directing, but we'll find out. And then my final news item, unfortunately, every week we have to do this now. We have to redact something that we talked about or announced. Jim, you knew it was coming anyways because you said it was unconfirmed. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield have completely debunked the Spider-Man 3 cameos or showing ups. So that is not true.
But is that subterfuge?
It could be. I don't know. At this point, I don't know what to believe.
Yeah.
Fake news left and right. I can't figure it out. But the sadder news is that Tatiana Maslany has also come out and said that all of those stories about her being cast in She-Hulk are false. That is not true. She goes, that is a news story that got out of hand. She goes, I may have talked to them, but it never came to fruition. So both those stories are off the table. So who knows?
I blame social media for this.
For what? The person slow news cycle, so they just make up stuff? Welcome to the 21st century.
Well, no, one person posts it and then it blows up.
Well, it was on
You only
Facebook. It
need
has
that
to be
one
true,
post, right? You only need that
Yeah.
one post from.
But it was also like it wasn't just people repeating rumors. Like it was on
Right.
credible news outlets. Like
Yeah.
I think I saw it on Hollywood Reporter or
Hollywood
Variety
Reporter,
or something.
and they're usually
Yeah.
my go-to.
Mhm.
So I mean, yeah, maybe they're just trying to quell rumors in the hope that you'll forget about it, and then they show up on screen, and you're like, oh, they lied to us. That's like that damn Star Trek 2, where everybody knew that Benedict Cumberbatch was Khan. I don't know. So there you go. That's my news. Then let's get into this because I had fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tip my hat too much, but I had fun this week.
It was a decent week, wasn't it? Now,
Yes, it was.
We're going to mention Mr. Murphy a number of times in this episode. So it's fortuitous that he came up in the news because whenever I think of our first movie that we're covering, my mind immediately says Vampires versus Brooklyn. The reason being because of that Eddie Murphy movie from the 90s. What was it called? Vampire in Brooklyn or
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I never, ever have, like in the whole week leading up to viewing it, I've never called it Vampires versus the Bronx. Oh, we're going to watch Vampires versus Brooklyn. That would be an entirely different movie, by the way.
Actually, I also think that's a sequel. Like, we're just going to move from one New York borough to the next. Curse you, Murphy.
But yeah, we have Vampires versus the Bronx, another new movie.
Yeah, Netflix.
Production started in 2018. So this is well before our current pandemic situation. So this was ready to go. They shopped it. Netflix picked it up and it premiered at the beginning of the month in October. I don't know if it's in the top 10 now because when I watched it, usually if something is like number 1 or number 5, it'll say right there in the description.
Yeah, you also, on the computer, they have the top 10 list.
Which is surprising because, you know, Halloween, you'd think that people are looking for new content like this, especially something like this, which is relatively family friendly. It wasn't a hardcore horror movie.
Yes, absolutely.
And very surprised to see that it was done by Lorne Michaels. He's one of the producers. And Broadway Video is Saturday Night Live.
That's some Saturday Night Live creds there.
And we have Chris Redd, who plays one of the guys are sitting around in the neighborhood.
Andre and Papo, my son started calling them Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because they were just always there commenting.
They're the commentators.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
And he's very good on SNL. So I enjoyed seeing Chris Redd. I was surprised that there weren't more cast members from SNL in this movie, actually. But yeah, he was the only one.
Unfortunately, it is not in the top 10 at Netflix right now. Number 2 is Adam Sandler's Hubie Halloween. And if you've seen this trailer, stay away. Oh, man, I don't know what this man's doing. But anyways, I digress. Yeah, I mean, this came out of nowhere. Christina, you're the one who stumbled across it and laid it out there.
Well, it's interesting, too. So the basic plot of this movie is that this community in the Bronx is starting to get gentrified. Businesses are disappearing and people are disappearing and nobody really knows why. And these 3 boys from the neighborhood, but particularly one, Miguel, he's known as Little Mayor.
And how adorable is this kid?
Yeah.
But all 3 of them, the chemistry these 3 kids had, I thought was great.
He wants to save the local bodega. The rent's been raised and these 3 boys, Luis, Miguel, and Bobby, have basically been raised in the bodega. Yeah. The bodega owner, Tony, says, you know, that like they do their homework there, they play video games there, they keep out of trouble when they're with him. So Miguel's trying to do this fundraiser to save the bodega. And as this is happening, all of a sudden, all these properties around the neighborhood are getting bought up by Murnau Properties, which I love the name of this property company.
That is a Nosferatu reference.
Yeah,
that's correct.
It's a F.W. Murnau who directed Nosferatu, and there's a little Max Schreck shadow effect later in the movie, which I also loved. So it's really a commentary about gentrification that's couched in horror movie terms, basically. And the interesting thing about this is, you know, sometimes it just seems like there's something in the water. A book that I actually mentioned on our Antebellum episode, When No One Is Watching, by Alyssa Cole, is about this exact same thing, except it's a neighborhood in Brooklyn that's getting gentrified, and suddenly residents are disappearing mysteriously, and businesses are closing up, and there's just suddenly a lot of white people, and there's a sinister reason why it's happening. So it's sort of interesting to see, especially because I just read this book less than a month ago, that this is something that's sort of coming out thematically, different ways of sort of approaching gentrification of neighborhoods and cities. I know neither of you guys are city dwellers, but I've lived through this now in 2 neighborhoods, and I can tell you that it's not great.
Okay.
You're watching like all the character of your neighborhood get sucked out. So as an urban dweller, I was really feeling for these kids who are just trying to preserve the neighborhood that they love.
Right.
You shitty folk. I've got to put mute on because there's somebody with a shotgun right outside my window.
I did read a review where someone said that this is basically the Hey Arnold movie. It's the same exact storyline, just minus vampires.
When I watched the trailer, I immediately got an Attack the Block vibe.
You know
That's
what?
what I got.
But
Yeah.
it's so much more, I think, likable. The kids right away, because in Attack the Block, I had to be won over by the kids.
Yeah.
Because, they're kind of street toughs, but these kids are just so lovable,
Right, they're
like,
just
in their
likable,
nerddom.
Yeah.
That you really connect with them immediately.
I was waiting to see, especially because you kind of came down on #Alive, because it leaned so heavily into like all the other zombie movies leading into it. I mean, this is really the Goonies. It's Lost Boys. It's Attack the Block. It's Monster Squad.
Mhm.
It's kids up against monsters that parents don't believe. No one believes them.
I didn't feel like I was watching the same story I've seen again over.
Okay,
Even though this has got it has much more in common, as you said, with the Lost Boys than it does Attack the Block.
Right. I mean, the
because of
vampires
the
look
fact
like
what they're
they
dealing
walked
with.
right off the set of.
But this is still, it hasn't really been attempted before in this particular setting.
Setting, right?
So I
But
thought,
doesn't
it
really
was
spread
fresh.
a lot of
It
new
was
ground.
fresh.
Okay, cool. I agree with you. I thought it's funny.
Mhm.
And like you said, the kids are just so likable that you can't help but root for them. It says right in the title, vampires. They're vampires. You don't
Mhm.
ever question whether or not, they really are. I thought this was great. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah. And again, it's like the Boy Who Cried Wolf story. We had it last week in Phantasm, where they know what's going on. They know the truth, but nobody believes them until
Right.
they see it themselves. There's some heartbreaking moment. It's very lighthearted. There's some moments of darkness in there. Like, spoiler alert, again, if you're going to watch this, we're going to spoil some things.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of them from the get-go is them saving the bodega. And they don't manage to do that, which is what's so heartbreaking. And Tony, who is
Right.
so likable, who is their
Yes.
father figure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he had one of my favorite lines, because when they're talking about the kids are in the bodega, they're talking about the things you need to defeat a vampire, and Luis goes, those little cookies you get at church that don't really taste like anything.
Right.
And Tony's like, you mean the Eucharist, you little heathen?
Right.
Speaking of that, the one thing I did take offense to was that none of the kids except Luis knew how to kill a vampire. That it's not like these kids are into sports or anything else that would take them away from ever seeing anything about a vampire.
Yeah, but
So-
that's great. I mean, the one thing this movie tells me is that we really need to review Blade, because he basically gives him a training lesson by watching Blade.
Talk about Dorf on golf. Stephen
you go.
Dorff in Blade.
One thing that really got to me is the character of Bobby. Like, people are so down on him. He made one mistake, and then everyone's like, "Oh, you're a troublemaker. You're going the way your
basically.
father's going."
Yeah.
And even his mom doesn't believe in him. She's like, "You're going to end up just like your
Just like
daddy."
your father.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
It's like the River Phoenix situation, right? And Stand By Me.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then he starts to feel rejected by the community. So Henny, the drug dealer, is
Yeah.
actually able to get in there instead
Right,
of him
and that's
being
how
like,
these kids fall for that stuff, because they're disenfranchised with their surroundings. And
and I just felt so
well,
much.
you tell me I'm
sympathy
bad
for
guy,
him.
you tell me I'm a piece of crap, I might
Mhm.
as well be one.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is a kind of a side story there, where you see him struggling to stay away from these guys. I did like the fact that they referred to Luis as a Puerto Rican Harry Potter. Thought that was kind of funny, because he's the nerd of the group.
Yeah.
And he has glasses, so of course you got
There
to
you
call him
go.
Harry
Well,
Potter
that's what you
since he
gotta
has
do,
glasses.
Right.
At one point, he goes, "You're giving way too much faith to a comic book." He goes, "It's a graphic novel." I'm like, "You go, kid."
I probably have said that a few times.
Yeah, you're pretentious.
But let's
comics.
get into the story right away. Surprise, surprise! You have Gamora in the beauty parlor. She's selling out, gleefully selling out to Murnau. They're buying her shop, and we get a visit from Frank, who we've seen before. The actor's name, and I never knew this until this viewing of Vampires versus the Bronx, is Shea Wiggum, and I know him best from, if anybody out there remembers Agent Carter, which is the Marvel TV show.
Great.
He was
great show.
Carter's boss in S.H.I.E.L.D., in the nascent S.H.I.E.L.D. organization.
He was also on Kong Skull Island.
Yes, that's right. I've seen him a lot in recent years. So
he's a character actor.
And he is the familiar of the vampire. So he's their human face. And
that's funny because you mentioned it, I think, in Fright Night, and I had no point of reference to that. But when they brought it up, I'm like, oh, that's what Jim was talking about.
Well, you ever see Salem's Lot? It's the James Mason character in Salem's Lot as well. Ooh, Jeff.
Oh, that was the other thing. Wasn't Luis reading Salem's Lot at the beginning?
He was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so there's all these little hidden.
Zoe Saldana does not last long. She's only in the first 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, she must have owed somebody a couple dollars.
They have a ton of very tiny, only for the nerds kind of vampire references. And one of them is that Frank's last name is Polidori. I'm sure you've heard that when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, it was sort of a legendary weekend where the four of them, like 4 people, including Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, took drugs and wrote Gothic stories. And one of the stories that was written that weekend was The Vampire by John Polidori.
Oh, there you go.
As immortalized in the very out there film Gothic.
Yes. So if you caught that, you caught it. If you didn't, you didn't. But I liked it. I was like, oh, Polidori, cool. There's just a lot of little things that they do, just kind of throw in there.
But even like as you see the storefronts all being converted and coming soon, and they had like all these crazy names for stores.
Right.
Like even some of that, like the 2 guys you talked about before, the one was called Bone and Thread, and they're just like, wait, is it a food store or is it a clothing store? And it doesn't matter because they're just silly little throwaway things like that.
Oh my gosh, the names of the stores was killing me, like the butter store. And it is such a sort of gentrification thing, like a whole store with different varietals of butter in it. Give me a break, Well, but it's perfect.
When Tony, who's running the bodega, he's trying to, the white girl walks in and he's like, oh, I got some kale over here. I got some other kale. I'm trying my best to accommodate you influxing into my community here.
He has the oat milk.
Oat milk, yeah. Oat milk.
Now, the gang of vampires, it seems that there's only 5 of them. So it's not as many.
It is like Lost Boys, right? It's just the 5 of them.
But they've also bought, was it an old church that they're converting?
It was the courthouse. The courthouse.
The courthouse. They're converting that into their headquarters. When they go to meet Frank and pretending to go in there and ask him for some money, which he gives them for the Save the Bodega.
Right.
But in the meantime, they steal a little pouch off of his desk. And in that pouch is a file, which they slide into their computer, and they see the plans for this headquarters. And so there's all these coffins that they have worked out in these blueprints. So you're getting the impression, even though it seems like it's a very complicated process to turn somebody into a new vampire, that's what they're planning on doing, because there's more than just 5 coffins that you see in these blueprints. So they're planning on making more vampires in this neighborhood, as well as killing people. And we're introduced to the character of Vivian pretty early on. And she's not revealed as a vampire right away. She's just the friendly, kind of clueless.
No, at this point you can't.
Moved in, boys.
Nah, you can't trust any white person in this movie.
Especially one with a canvas bag.
Or that strongly resembles Miley Cyrus. And that was the issue. Once she actually reveals her fangs, I'm like, couldn't they have a scarier actress portray the head vampire? Because she's not really doing it for me. But the other vampires, they kind of look like an early 80s new wave band all put together.
Like I said, they walked right off the set of Lost Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
D-baggery is not restricted to human beings.
It's true. You have to go to a class for that. You're going to be a vampire. You got to be a D-bag.
Because
Right.
you assume before you know that Frank is a familiar, because you only see him at night in the beginning. So you don't know if he's a vampire or not.
And they think he is, right?
Mhm.
And they're trying to, get him out in the sunlight. We're gonna prove it to you. When he met with the boys, he pulled the shades down, so it's just feeding into their fears that this guy is a vampire. That's why they stole the thing off his desk.
And they're disproven once he walks out into the daylight. And again, it's that the boy who cried wolf syndrome. We're like,
Well, that's the thing. Right now, they got their family there. Look, watch, and he walks right out, and they're like, yeah, that's not what's supposed to happen.
One thing I like is Miguel has the video where they went into the lair and he's like, watch this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the vampire is not on the video.
Yeah.
But the only person who realizes that means there's an actual vampire is Rita. Because she's like, my grandmother's Haitian. I've been preparing for this my whole life.
Yep. And I like the the way that they kind of wove in the social media, the things that are going on in the neighborhoods, and that kind of it expands the story even bigger, to what these kids are going through, because it's all being recorded at some point. And I thought this was wildly entertaining. I really liked it. It was fun.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I like the book ending
Gloria.
character.
Yeah,
That's posting on social media, like
right.
in the beginning, and she's kind of also bringing you through from the neighborhood's point of view.
Right. And it's what's really fun is you get glimpses of the comments that are going by, and a lot of them go by way too fast, but hey, little mayor, it's the little mayor, and they're all like, so yeah, there's a lot of little detail stuff that
and there's that one point when there's a confrontation between, it's almost like High Noon, where the vampires are on one side and the boys are on the other, and the two girls cluelessly walk in between them,
right,
like walking into the street, looking at their phones and not realizing they're about to get hit by a car.
The one thing that I love, so after the boys sort of get in trouble for stealing the file and all this stuff that they do, their mothers and grandmother take them to make them go to church. So they decide to use the time in church to steal holy water. And I'm just wincing the whole time. So they've got the Sprite bottle. They've got the juice bottle that Luis is always carrying because he has low blood sugar. And he finishes it off. So it's still got orange juice and backwashing it, right? And he's putting it in the holy water.
And that was to the priest was Method Man.
Father Jackson, played by Method Man. He is not having any of these shenanigans, so he will not hesitate to beat their ass if he sees anything untoward. I think he was a stability as well as Tony for these kids.
Yes,
and he's watching they're all praying. That's when the boys sneak out when everyone's eyes are closed, and he opens his eyes and looks around and sees they're not there, and he's like, "Where did they go?" And he runs off to try to find them, and he sees that the Sprite bottles are gone from, and he's like, little shit, stole my Sprite.
Oh man.
And I also liked how they ended it, how it was the neighborhood that came together to defeat the vampires as well, to rid the neighborhood of this gentrification and to get rid of Murnau. And again, they didn't have many vampires to kill.
No.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a good time watching it. I laughed a few times. It's a very lighthearted, if your kids are older, there's some language in it. It's PG-13.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd recommend it for families that have, tween kids. I think they would really get a kick out of it.
Yeah, especially in Halloween. It's a fun movie. I liked it. And I could see them doing like bring back these characters and, it's werewolves or it's, some other monster. Like you could do a whole series of these movies versus the Bronx. Aliens versus the Bronx.
Right.
Well,
right.
Now you're just getting it. Now you're getting right into Attack the Block.
That is Attack the Block.
Yeah, that is Attack the Block. But anyways, yeah. This was a very nice surprise.
I was just looking at some reviews, and there's the unfortunately named Roger Moore of Movie Nation. But the quote is, "Nobody should be making serious vampire or zombie movies at this stage of the horror cycle. So this riff on the genre absolutely fills the bill." I don't know if I'd agree with nobody should be making serious vampire or zombie movies.
Dare you make a serious movie?
The general critical consensus is positive. So yeah, if you got Netflix, it is worth your time.
Yep. Yeah, and if you like any of those movies we mentioned, you're gonna like them. I need to throw in Stranger Things or It or any of these other kid-driven.
It goes by quick when we all like a movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's
It's more fun when we have to kind of talk someone else up. But
so what kind of buckets would we give to Vampires versus the Bronx? I'm going to go 3.5.
I'm going to go 3 3/4.
Yeah, and I also say 3.5. And my 14-year-old says 4.5.
Nice.
He liked this a lot.
Yeah.
He wants me to have his buckets tallied every week. It's like,
and I should also point this out. This is done in every single vampire movie. The heroes wait until it's almost sundown to go into the vampire lair. If you are a hero in a vampire movie, get your ass up at 6 a.m. and go right there.
There you go. Wow, we all loved it.
All right, so let's go to the concession stand. And this very aptly, we're going to the concession stand today because we're coming back. We need to bring something back.
You have a Wonka candy commercial?
Now, for every kid who has ever seen a science fiction movie, thrilled to the amazing strength of an out-of-this-world movie monster, comes Great Garloo by Marx. Garloo the Mighty. Garloo the Untamed. Garloo the Terrible. Who can stop him? Who can control this monstrous creature? You can, kids, because Great Garloo by Marx is yours to command. With these battery-operated controls, you can make Garloo go, stop, bend, pick up, turn. Yes, Great Garloo, almost 2 feet tall, will be your faithful servant. You name it, you're the boss. Bring out-of-this-world excitement into your house, kids. Own the most fantastic toy of all. Great Garloo by Marx. M-A-R-X spells Marx, world's largest toy maker.
Okay, we are back, and we are talking about a modern classic, Candyman, 1992. Now, Christina, as you mentioned, this is a Chicago movie.
Oh, yeah.
You could not have this movie the way that it exists without Chicago. It would leave a gaping, sucking chest.
It is a character in
if
itself.
you took Chicago out of this movie.
Yep.
So what is the local opinion of Candyman? Is this revered in your neck of the woods?
I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but Chicagoans love anything that is set in Chicago. We love movies that are set here, and
except for Rampage, they don't want.
And the thing about Cabrini Green, I mean, if you didn't know about it before, it was probably one of the most infamous housing projects in the country. It was here. It got torn down. Like the last tower got torn down about 10 years ago. It was a devastating example of the city just abandoning a community completely. And a lot of the stuff that you see in the film, you know, where they talk about, oh, there's a shooting there every day, and, you know, people are scared to go into the neighborhood. And Bernadette says to Helen, like, why are we going here? You know, this is incredibly stupid. The neighborhood was dangerous because there were 5 warring gangs who were just fighting for territory all the time. And not everyone in the neighborhood was a gangster, right? So it's epitomized by the character of Anne-Marie, who's like just a single mom who's just trying to live in this, you know, horrific environment, just trying to get by. Most of the people in the neighborhood were like that, but their lives were in danger because of the community situation. And the film does a great job of highlighting. This is why I feel like it pairs really well with Vampires versus the Bronx in a way.
The film I thought it was a great pairing.
The film does a really good job of highlighting how these communities are both over-policed, you know, and under-policed. So over-policed because you can get stopped and picked up for anything, but when there's an actual crime, like in the film, Anne-Marie calls 911 because she hears her next door neighbor getting murdered, and the police never come.
Right.
Right.
You know?
Yet when Helen is attacked in that bathroom, suddenly the next scene she's looking at a lineup.
Right.
Yeah.
And Helen actually says that, right? She says that, like there's two brutal murders and the cops do nothing. A white woman is attacked and they sweep in, and then suddenly it's urgent to pick up the person who did the attack. So we should probably like rewind back a little bit to the beginning here before we get started.
Yeah.
But the film starts with this urban legend about Candyman. And I think this is such a great way to open it. Somebody is telling a story to Helen Lyle, who's a grad student who's doing a thesis about urban legends. And she tells a story about a babysitter and her boyfriend came over and it's Ted Raimi.
Ted Raimi.
Yep, Ted Raimi.
Now, before you go on, I just want to point out two cast members of Hard Target are in.
Yes.
We have
Casey
Ted
Lemons.
Raimi and boom,
Casey Lemons.
Lemons.
So he goes over to the house where his girlfriend is babysitting, and she's decided this is the day she's going to give it up to him, right? And so they stupidly say Candyman in the mirror.
Because apparently this is a turn on for the girl, right?
Well, you know what's funny is I was listening to a podcast, long before, about urban legends, and they delved into the Bloody Mary, which is what this basically leans into. And these girls, these sleepover parties, that's what they would do. They would scare the crap out of each other by going to the mirror. I dare you to say it 5 times, So I was confused early on because of the voiceover in this up front. And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on until it cuts away. And then you realize that she's interviewing this girl and they're just visually playing out the story that she's, so yeah, I was kind of taken at the beginning. I'm like, what is going on here?
Well, when you say voiceover, I'm thinking of Tony Todd's voiceover at the beginning. Obviously I've seen this before, but I wanted it to be fresh and I didn't want to read a lot until after I saw it. But the one thing that I remember looking at was criticism as to why Candyman goes after the people of the projects. Why does he go after the residents of Cabrini Green? Why isn't he going into a more affluent area? People that committed these crimes against him. But he almost explains it himself at in the very opening moments. They will say, I've shed innocent blood. What's blood if not for shedding?
Yeah.
He exists. The reason he exists is he's perpetuating his own urban legend.
His existence is predicated on belief. So if he's like the neighborhood boogeyman, then he can keep existing. Basically.
He wouldn't exist if he wasn't there.
Well, that's you get into like Tulpa territory now, where which is a creature that basically feeds on fear.
Right.
So the more you fear him, the more powerful it becomes.
But the great thing about the story at the beginning, first of all, it's a great way to establish sort of the rules of the story, right? She says Candyman 5 times, he appears, she's killed. But then there's a great line what the student says to Helen, like, my roommate's boyfriend knows him, right?
That's the way they always go.
Like the way they always go. There's always like 3 or 4 degrees of separation, but somehow there's a personal connection to this urban legend. And that's why they keep going, right? Because people are like, oh, well, I know somebody and it really happened to them.
Well, you see more of that even when you're introduced to Trevor, who I couldn't wait for him to be killed. Right from the minute he shows up on screen, you're like, this guy is a piece of crap.
Now, Jeff, did you realize that was Gregory from The Walking Dead?
Yeah, yes. I knew Xander.
Now, I know him best from the X-Files episode Ice, which is like kind of
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's the X-Files guy.
Well, I actually thought Virginia Madsen was like a poor man's Scully too. She looked.
She looks very Scully-esque.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, when you're introduced to him in his classroom, and he's talking about urban legends and the fact, the story about the alligators in the sewers. Well, I heard in New York, and no, I heard down in Miami, and he's like, this is like how we perpetuate. This is modern oral folk tales,
right?
Lore. This is how we keep things going.
But whenever the word myth was uttered, I was expecting Carol Kane to poke her head around the corner. Yes?
Yes. Myth.
So as the film goes on, though, and like Helen, it's very interesting about this film. You hear Tony Todd's voice at the beginning, but then you go about 40 minutes or so without actually seeing, Candyman without seeing Tony Todd.
And that's
because
good.
because there's
That's a good thing.
because there's a basically just a neighborhood thug who's like using Candyman like to commit crimes. And so when Helen goes back to Cabrini after their first trip,
you went back there. Come on.
It's really not smart to go there by herself. And
No.
Jake tells her, the little boy that she meets.
Yep, and he was great, by the way.
Now, even though he's always got a frown, he is still adorable.
Yes.
And I was trying to figure out, okay, who's more adorable, Miguel or Jake? Or Jake. It was a tie. Yeah. There was no winner there. There's no winner.
And he tells her, you shouldn't be going around this neighborhood by yourself, you know? And so he takes her on a little tour, so to speak, showing her some different things, and takes her to this bathroom where a kid was attacked. And he decides,
and he sells that story as well. He sells it, that about what happens to the kid. Horrific. It's a horrific section of this movie. And I have to say, Virginia Madsen completely sells the bad smell of the bathroom.
Yes. I bet you they probably really did like put like a dead animal or something in there, because you can't help but react.
So interesting fact, because the story is horrible, right? So you're saying, like, how did they even come up with this? And I saw an interview with Clive Barker where he said when he was very small, his grandmother used to scare him and tell him not to go into public bathrooms because his genitals would get cut off by strange men.
Damn. Grandma. Harsh.
Well, that I guess whatever works, right?
And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, so that's how that ended up.
I wonder why he messed up and wrote all those books. It's all grandma. That comes out in therapy.
So, right. So Jake tells this story and she goes in the bathroom. And of course, you're just waiting for something terrible to happen.
See, this is what you were saying before, which is the fact that Candyman doesn't show up until 40 plus minutes in. But the tension just ratchets it up, because she's putting herself and Bernadette into a very precarious situation that we all know is not going to end well. And like you feel like, listen, I went into this apprehensive as it was, because I don't like these movies.
But what they're doing is, I think the brilliance of the opening of this is not only is it creating suspense, especially that whole sequence where they first go into the building and they're searching that apartment, the old dilapidated apartment, but they come to the conclusion that the attacker came through the medicine cabinet.
Right.
So you're kind of like debunking the existence of Candyman. Like, oh, this isn't supernatural at all. This is like there's a very logical explanation.
Which is great. And again, she does, because here's the guy that's running around with a meat hook claiming to be Candyman. And she gets a living crap beat out of her.
And there's again, like touching back on the urban legend things, when she goes into that apartment, she finds Halloween candy with razor blades in it.
Yeah, I know.
Again,
immediately,
like, urban legend,
yep.
Right. And then by the way, the thing with the killer coming through the medicine cabinet, that was based on a real incident.
Yeah.
You can read the article. It's a Chicago Reader story, and it was not, the incident did not take place in Cabrini Green. It was in the Abbott homes, but it was, the killer came through that thin connection between the medicine cabinet.
So there's no firewalls whatsoever. I mean, that's insane.
So Helen gets attacked by this regular mortal man claiming to be Candyman. And because of this attack, she doesn't believe Candyman exists, right? She's like, he's not real. It's, something that people are using to explain the horror of their daily life.
Yep.
And so then, of course, he has to show up and set her straight.
This
now she's already at the beginning of the movie uttered his name 5 times.
Yes.
So she's already cursed herself for the rest of the film because she does that.
This takes a turn into Crazy Town. This is not what I expected at all. This was absolutely insane.
But Tony Todd, especially when he first shows up and he's got that beautiful resonant baritone, his costume is period appropriate.
Okay.
So he's got, he's got like a cravat you can see underneath.
Yes.
And the houndstooth pants were period appropriate. The shoes, the coat, like it was all, and obviously it was all tailored for him because he's 6'5". So he has this amazing sort of physical presence, and I think he's just outstanding. And I think he's one of those characters who you end up sort of having a deep well of sympathy for, even though he's the villain.
Well, I mean, you get his backstory, which really kind of explains, you know, who and what he was. And I found that very interesting.
Right, because there's
heartbreaking backstory.
Yeah.
Right, because there's this great racial injustice at the heart of this movie, you know, which is that, you know, he fell in love with a white woman and he was attacked by a mob and his hand was cut off and he was covered in honey and killed by bees, right? And so, and then he was burned and his ashes were scattered where Cabrini Green is.
Yep.
So yeah, there's like this sort of deep injustice like at the heart of who he is.
Yeah.
And Helen she's scared of him, but she's also fascinated by him and she doesn't really know why. You know, and you feel that she's really good at this. She's like, you sort of feel that push-pull, you know, where she's frightened of him and yet she's drawn to him.
You know what's crazy? Speaking to that, I was reading some behind the scenes stuff. He actually got hypnotized before she would film.
That's crazy. That is insane. That is method acting that is nuts. Yeah, they hypnotized her with a trigger word.
Yeah. So I have the Shout Factory Collector's Edition for this, the Blu-ray, and there's a ton of interviews and behind the scenes stuff. And Virginia Madsen talked about that, doing the hypnotism, and she said like her face and her eyes in particular really did something different, I guess, when she was hypnotized. Crazy. Like her pupils were dilated, and her
flutters.
And her face was just sort of slack in a completely different way. But she said after a while, she said to Bernard, like, don't come near me. like, I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah, that's like a dog
with a shock collar. All right, we need you to, you don't trust your acting skills, so we're just going to put this trigger event in you.
It turns out that it goes both ways. The Candyman is infatuated with her.
Yes.
Because she reminds him of that girl.
Right.
Well, I got that they had a connection. And obviously, at the end, you do see, you know, it was you all along, Helen.
And that same year, it made me think immediately. Of course, I thought of Dracula with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder.
That's right. Yeah.
Mina.
Yeah. But she's got all this going on, and meanwhile, Trevor is just the worst POS in the world. This guy is just.
It's so funny because you get to the end of the movie and you're thinking to yourself, how can we have gotten through this movie without this guy getting eviscerated? Right?
Yeah, well, no, it's very cathartic when he does get it at the end.
Yes, because my wife, because we often have this conversation when we're watching a movie. She's like, who is that guy? Oh, you know, it's the guy, you know, the jerk that always gets killed in a horror movie. That's
Just wait. Yeah, my wife's good for that. I know that guy. He was in that thing. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Right. So then Candyman, in order to spur Helen's belief, basically sets her up for crimes he commits.
This is horrible. This is absolutely.
But this is the thing: is that this was throwing me because he needs belief to exist, yet he's framing her. But you know, in the end, it turns out that she is the next. She's the successor in the line. So his intent was not to throw suspicion off of him. He's a ghost. Who's going to arrest him? Right. Yeah. But he wants her to join him. You know, in immortality. So it makes sense.
So to that end, is she now known as Candy Ma'am? Or Candy Mom?
Were you saving that all week, Jeff?
Well, wait, because when she gets older, she's going to be Candy Graham. That's about the only laugh I got out of this movie, by the way. but I survived it.
Yes, you're here to tell the tale.
Survived it. I
You are
survived
here
it.
to
Got
tell
all
the
the way
tale.
through.
But I did watch it in daylight. I did not watch it at night because again,
And-
I have to watch it with family members, and I don't want my wife to get up and walk away.
Let's talk about the mechanics of Candyman. Now, he is a supernatural being, yet he has physical hooks that
Yeah.
she
Right.
finds. So he does. I don't know if he can
And he somehow
manipulate
needs
the
to sleep.
physical or what have you. And how is he changing the baby diapers with one hand?
With the one hand.
Because
That
the
is
baby,
tricky.
he's got the baby for a month. She's in that hospital.
And that
for a
whole
month.
scene where she wakes up and she's covered in blood, and you see Amory's dog, and you just assume that she also slaughtered little baby Anthony.
Because the crib is full of blood.
Right.
So you're just
and
like,
she goes nuts, and of course the cops come in. It went in places I did not expect it to go to. And like you said, you do kind of have sympathy for not only her, but also for him. Like you just like, he's not just a villainous Freddy Krueger,
right.
as a kid toucher and burned. Yeah, it was nuts. And of course, poor Bernadette.
And I love Casey Lemons, which you guys know, because that was like literally the only reason I was watching Hard Target.
Hey, you had a Raimi in there too. You had a
That is
Raimi in
true.
there too.
And yeah, I know it's so frustrating that she gets killed. She shows up with the flowers and she looks
Yeah.
so innocent, like she, and Helen's going, leave, go. She's trying
Yeah.
to call her and tell her to get out. And then the door shuts and he's standing there. Sort of an interesting thing that they almost got an X rating for this movie. And apparently it's because the MPAA doesn't like blood spurt. Like they don't like, it's all about like where the blood is coming from.
We can have nipples in excessive smoking. But
Like where it's spurting to.
We got that in Phantasm last week as well.
yeah.
So, but I don't think of I don't know. I guess it's just me in my head, but I don't think of this as super gory. I think there's a few scenes, but they're not like lingering on
Right. It's
stuff.
It's almost like crime scene photography. The scenes that they set up here.
Like you see it very quickly and then it's gone,
right.
Or like you see the effects of like what
It's
Candyman
like
does, but you
the
don't
aftermath.
see him,
right.
like,
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
like
No,
putting the
correct.
hook into flesh,
Yep.
things like that.
No.
And that's what I think of as gory, like where you actually see somebody
Correct.
getting cut, or like you see, like if I see viscera, then I'm like, okay, that's gory. But like, I don't think of like blood spurting as gore. So I'm always shocked when the MPAA is giving horror films a hard time for having blood in the movie. Like this is kind of
a little
the
excessive.
the requirements of the genre.
Yeah,
don't you think?
It's like somebody clutching the pearls, watching it.
And it also sparked a discussion like with my son, because my son watched this with me. By the way, he loved this. He was like over the moon about this movie, about like the categories of R, because there's a very wide range of what you see in an R movie. You can see an R movie that has like basically no gore in it at all, an R horror movie, or you can go all the way to something like Hellraiser,
Right.
Yeah. Which is where the term hard R comes
yeah.
from.
So, and you say to yourself, like, how does Hellraiser get an R and they're giving Candyman a hard time, right? So,
but again, maybe it's political. Maybe you got the wrong person on the wrong day watching.
Right. Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
But
interesting.
Yeah, but I think that the denouement of this film is so interesting. Where he's almost trying to like romance her.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he tells her that the baby is safe if she joins him.
Yeah.
Right. Join me.
And Tony Todd said in an interview that they wanted like a gothic elegance to Candyman, and they wanted him to feel like the Phantom of the Opera. They want him to feel like a tragic figure.
Yep, I can kind of see that.
and who's just looking for love.
Hey,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he got a hook, line, and sinker. Oh, you had to have a hook joke in there somewhere.
You're killing me.
Oh no, that's not me. I'm not killing you.
Only one canned laughter per episode.
Well, another thing I found very fascinating, which we have not talked about yet, is the aerial shots.
Yeah.
That open the movie, and I don't even want to call it, the music score is absolutely breathtaking.
Yes.
I thought it was really, really nice, and it kind of like counterproductive against what you're seeing on screen, because it's like this choral, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like this choral over, music that's just playing through. And I did read that Philip Glass was very disappointed when he saw the movie because it was not what he thought it was going to be at all.
Well, although I did also read that Candyman, since it's so popular, he still gets checks every year for.
Well, yeah, so he's not bitching, so he's not complaining too much.
He's not complaining about that.
But it really stood out for me, especially those opening shots over Chicago and the streets, and I guess that was pretty innovative camera work at the time. Because all you're going to do, you didn't have drones back then in the 90s. You just had to slap it onto a helicopter.
And they do this more than once, the shots of the outside auditorium.
Yes.
At the college. It's like directly below.
And that's what we talked about before, which is Chicago is a character in and of itself in this movie. The environment really kind of informs you and feeds these characters.
Especially since it's real life places that they're, this is
Correct.
not a made up place that they're basing this in.
Yeah. Right. I just think, you see New York 1,000 times. So to see someplace like this, and it's almost like new to you, even though it's, people who live in Chicago are like, yeah, oh, there you go. That's my neighborhood.
Well, it's funny because the skyline especially has changed so much in the last 28 years. And so you look at the skyline like, whoa, it's so different, just to see. But just from that opening shot, they're on Congress Parkway, and they go underneath the old post office. The post office is like this huge building that goes over the highway, and you see it in a lot of Chicago movies. In fact, it's used in The Dark Knight. Henry's like, I know where that is. I'm like, yes, we've driven under it like 100 times, or like the scene when she's in the back of the car and she's on Lower Wacker. Lower Wacker is in every Chicago movie, so you're just like, oh yeah, like you recognize a lot of the places if you're a resident. The interesting thing, so on the Shout Factory collection, there's an interview with Tananarive and Steve Barnes, who are two African-American writers, and they sort of deconstruct Candyman, and they talk about how it's really, it's from an outsider's perspective, right? How it's like a white guy and a white writer. Obviously, the original story was set in Liverpool. It was transposed to Chicago. And they talk about a few places where the movie not quite fails, but sort of like skates very close to the edge, because there's sort of an inherent problem in a way of presenting the black man as the monster pursuing the white woman. But they point out that at the time this film came out, there were many, many more positive representations of Black males in film. It was very interesting actually to think about it. They were like, Wesley Snipes was in Passenger 57, like he was the hero that year, and Sidney Poitier was in Sneakers. And then you have all these kind of positive depictions. So in a way, if you're not just seeing 5 movies where the black man is the monster, right?
Well, I mean, outside of Blackula, when has the black guy been the bad guy?
Right.
To this level, to this degree, where he's truly a horrific creature.
It's a film that is told from an outsider's perspective, but in the end, like, it does make an effort to show that it's, it's not like The Birth of a Nation or something. It's not like the all black men are monsters, right, lustfully pursuing white women type of thing. And I think that criticism is valid, but they also talk about how groundbreaking the film is in a sense, by having Tony Todd in that role. I think what's going to be really interesting is to see Nia DaCosta's interpretation of this.
I was going to ask you,
which
you know,
they're not painting this as a remake.
It's a
but
sequel.
rather
no,
as
it's a sequel. Yeah, from what I understand, it's set today in the same environment.
Right,
where
and Anthony, the
Cabrini-
little baby that Helen saves at the end,
Okay, yep.
is the main character of the story.
Oh, I like that.
Me
Yeah.
too. I'm
Mhm.
really
like that.
excited to see what they do.
I would like to see Jake return as well.
I know, because Jake is he's almost like the
He's
neighborhood
like a little
watchman.
sage. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like this. He's like the little Yoda that's just overseeing everything. He sees
with
what's
his-
going on.
Always with that solemn face as well, distrustful, solemn face.
In production, they referred to him as One Take Jake,
Yes.
and that he only stayed during the premiere to see his own scenes, and then he left.
Speaking of Tony Todd, and you had mentioned earlier Phantom of the Opera, he actually said, I read an interview with him, I've always wanted to find my own Phantom of the Opera. Long before Candyman, and he did.
So who do they have cast as Candyman for this reboot?
Tony Todd.
Sequel? Oh, it is still him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
You can hear his voice in the preview.
I didn't watch the preview.
Well, they brought back. You should.
You're lucky you got me to watch this. No, you've been pushing this down my throat for months. I watched it. I survived. Now you got to give me a little leeway before I watch the trailer
preview,
for the new one.
Just makes it look great. It doesn't give away a ton, but it has a great opening scene, which is like 5 teenage white girls, of course, saying Candyman in the mirror at their school. And you're
girls.
like, stupid white girls. Like,
Here we go. Stupid white men in the first movie, stupid white girls in the second one.
Speaking of Tony Todd, I'm going to bring his name up again. Eddie Murphy was originally approached.
Are you kidding me? I would laugh probably the first time I saw him on screen.
And they couldn't afford him. So thankfully, they couldn't afford him.
That would be a completely different movie. No. I don't see it.
Tony Todd brings this really great gravitas.
I was waiting for you to use that word because that's exactly what he has.
And someone in one of the interviews I watched said that, he almost plays it like Othello, which is actually a very apt comparison, I think. And he brings this weight, like you can sort of feel his melancholy. And again, like he's so beautiful. He has this incredible presence, and he was perfect. You cannot imagine Eddie Murphy in this part.
That was before he was really dipping his toes into dramatic parts. So he was still pretty much a comedian at that time. So I can't see how he would have played it. It would have been a completely different tone to the movie.
Right. Yeah, I think it would have been laughable.
And again, talking about Tony Todd, the big reluctance he had about this was working with the bees.
Wouldn't you? By the way, Tony, you're going to have a bunch of bees flying out of your mouth.
And he's going to get stung. Yeah, and he's going to get stung almost guaranteed.
23 times, they said.
And he negotiated that every time he got stung during the filming of this, that they would pay him $1,000 per sting.
That's
$23,000.
As they should have.
Right?
Man had bees in his mouth.
Yeah.
He did have a mouthpiece.
It was like
you don't want him to go down your throat.
No.
It was a latex piece. So it they lined his cheeks, and then there was something basically to block them from going back.
I don't care.
During the filming, one of the bees did manage to get behind the latex piece on one of his cheeks, and he said he could feel it crawling.
I got stung in my mouth by a bee once. I can't imagine a whole mouthful.
No, and he said that he almost reached Zen. Like he was almost in a trance state when the bees.
You have to, because you can't freak out. I mean, the minute
watching it, I wasn't sure. Like, this can't be real. This has to be a prosthetic head. But no, it's him.
Yeah. No, it's him. I did read that they bred these bees specifically for this movie, and they're only 12 hours old.
Yeah, because the baby ones don't have stings.
Yeah, well, they're not as powerful, but it's crazy. Okay, knock your socks off there, Tony. I hope he doubled that for the next one.
The props department had a great story about the hook. So they had commissioned a blacksmith to make a hook, And the guy was like, oh yeah, no problem, I can do it. And they said, what do you want it for? And they said, oh, for a movie. And then they came to pick it up, and the guy asked them again, like, what is it for? And they said, well, it's for a movie with that's based on a story by Clive Barker, the guy who did Hellraiser.
Yep.
And they said they expected the guy to be like, oh, cool. And he took the hook and put it in a drawer and said, nope. And they were like, what?
What?
And he said, me and my son believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, our Savior. And he wouldn't give them the hook. He wouldn't let them have it because it was going to be used in a Clive Barker story.
Wow.
What did he think that they were using it for to begin with?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But speaking of Clive Barker, I didn't realize that it was based on a story from Books of Blood.
Yeah.
Which were my favorite anthology books in the 80s. Even more so, I think, than Night Shift, Stephen King. And I just remember when I read that, those garish, ugly covers, which suited Books of Blood so nicely in the 80s. They had these really bad horror masks on the covers. And it's just such a visceral memory from my early teen years, those Books of Blood. And they were very well read and paged through.
The copies that I had, which were from about the same era, I think, were like, they were almost like collages. Like there's all
that wasn't mine.
Stuff on the cover.
I had volumes 1 through 3, and each one of them had like its own horror movie mask on the cover of each one.
No, I've never seen those.
Mm.
But yeah, and it is a different story. The Forbidden is a different story. It's the same in its basic elements, but because it takes place in Liverpool, you don't have like that third rail of race. It's more about class and some other things. And but I think Candyman is just great. I just think it's like a modern masterpiece.
But yeah, I was going to say that director Bernard Rose, an Englishman, that's, he had a connection with Clive Barker. Just interesting that an Englishman took the story in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unexpected. And another bit of casting fun news, that Rose's wife was originally set to play Helen, and Virginia Madsen was going to play the friend character.
Bernadette.
And then Rose's wife was pregnant, and she had to drop out. And then Madsen eventually got the role, but she wasn't initially going to be Helen.
I did read that Sandra Bullock was back up.
Yeah, that she was considered for the part.
Right.
Imagine Sandra Bullock and Eddie Murphy in Candyman.
No.
Just so much not the same.
Oh, that's a Gumby movie.
Yeah.
Gumby, damn it. Where's my hook?
So it was released Halloween time, 1992, October 16th, on an 8 to 9 million budget, and it made 25 million at the box office. And it had 2 sequels.
I was going to say they had a couple sequels, yeah.
I don't think that the Virginia Madsen character was ever explored in those.
Yeah, because you know why? Saying Helen 5 times is not scary.
Well, plus the other thing is, yes, at the end, Trevor calls her name, right? And she comes and eviscerates them. It's very satisfying.
Yes, very satisfying.
Because he's the one character that you want to die throughout the film.
From the minute you meet him. Yes.
But the painting at the end, because now she's sort of entered the local folklore.
Yep.
She looks almost saint-like. She's
angelic, yeah.
She's rising from the flames.
Yeah.
Because she saved the baby, so it's really
Phoenix. So she's not necessarily she just came back one more time to say goodbye to Trevor.
It's so perfect because his new girlfriend is holding the knife.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So and he's eviscerated. So the cycle's starting all over again.
Correct. Yeah.
He's gonna get
basically setting her up. Yep.
Of course, this being a 90s horror movie, they had to throw some cheesecake in there with the girlfriend being untethered, I think is a way to put
Stan's
it.
bra. Yeah, like I said, you can show nipples and whatnot, but too much blood, forget it. You're getting an arm.
Right. Critics weren't very kind to this. I think history has shown this to be a classic more so. It wasn't regarded as such on release. The LA Times said this was as repellent as it is preposterous.
Preposterous. Like every scary movie's preposterous.
Yeah. Anything, any fantasy, any is preposterous.
Preposterous.
The New York Times kind of damned it with faint praise, saying it's an elaborate campfire story. So that doesn't tell me anything, you know?
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it bad? No, it's elaborate.
It's elaborate.
It's so frustrating when
Urban
reviewers don't seem to review a film on its merits.
Merits,
Like you should
They
not
ignore the story, and they're telling you their opinion of horror in general.
Right. They're not reviewing a horror movie and saying, okay, like where does this sit in the pantheon of horror films? They're like deciding that horror is not valuable, which was honestly an attitude adopted by most reviewers, with frankly the notable exception of Roger Ebert, who regularly gave positive reviews to horror movies.
I miss Roger Ebert.
Another Chicago institution.
There you go.
But most reviewers are just talking about how much they don't like horror and how it's not worthy of respect, you know, and that's frustrating.
Did you catch the Godzilla cameo in the projects?
No.
It was a nice big painting of Godzilla.
There was?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
I'll have to go back and take a screen grab.
And at what point was that?
That was the first time when Helen and Bernadette were making their way through. The first time when they had to go through the gauntlet of the men down on them.
I was so terrified of whatever was going to happen to them.
Yeah,
I wasn't noticing any of that stuff.
You were talking about the men who were shouting at Bernadette and Helen. Those were real gang members.
Were they really?
Paid off. Yeah, because they had to do some paying off just to come into the neighborhood.
Just to go into.
Right.
Yeah, they got people to like accept their presence in the neighborhood for a few days. They had plainclothes police officers. The one guy who played Jake said he didn't really know, because he was a kid, he didn't really notice, you know, how much tension there was on the set. He saw all the police officers around, but he just thought of them as security,
right?
You know, and it didn't really register to him like why they were there. And I guess they were there for a few days, and then somebody from a rooftop shot a bullet into one of the trailers.
Oh my.
Ooh.
And so then they were like, okay, and then they just kind of like quietly packed everything up and like left the neighborhood.
I wonder if those gang members are still getting residuals to this day.
You think so? I got my check.
So
12 cents.
But I mean, it again, like it has like multiple layers of commentary, right? Because it shows how dangerous the neighborhood is, but especially with the character of Anne Marie, like. She says, oh, well, white people come around and they talk to us, but they don't do anything, you know. And she says, like, you know, what are you coming to survey? That we all lie, that we all steal, that we all do drugs, you know. So like there's like sort of multiple layers of commentary going on here, just about how, you know, the city really just abandoned that neighborhood so completely and left people there to fend for themselves.
That's
it's like
crazy.
One of the great modern tragedies.
Wow.
And it was easier to do because, as is pointed out at the beginning when Helen talks about her building, right? Her building was meant to be public housing. Right. And then they looked out the window and they were like, oh, the Gold Coast is right there. There's nothing blocking off the poor people from the rich people. So we can't have that. So then, you know, they built Cabrini Green where they can use the highway and the river to keep the poor people from the rich people.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
I think it's a great movie, and I'm just so looking forward to the sequel to see how the story will be reinterpreted.
Yeah, let us know how that goes.
You're going to be there.
On the front lines. So, okay, what kind of buckets would we give it? Christina, what are you thinking?
So this one ranks very high for me. Many like positive feelings just because it's a great horror movie. Tony Todd, I think, is outstanding. It's a Chicago movie, which automatically gives it an extra half a bucket.
Right there. Check.
So for me, this is like it's like 4 3/4.
Wow.
Really close to.
Yeah.
And my son said 5. My son was because he was like Jeff. He had a little bit of trepidation. He was like, "This looks a little freakier than other things that I've watched with him." And he was like, "I don't know." And I said, "If you get uncomfortable, you can leave the room. Like, you're not required to stay." And he got done, and he was like, "That was amazing."
I agree. I won't go that high. I'm going to stick at 3.5, but this completely surprised me. This was not what I expected, you know. And again, sometimes you judge a book by its cover. You look at a poster with bees crawling over somebody's eyeballs, or, you know, the famous shot of the bees coming out of his mouth, I know. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah.
So, but I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised.
So this was a pretty popular rental for me in the 90s. I saw this several times on VHS, on a Saturday night after coming home from the video store, or a little bit later on HBO. So I always really liked this, and even more so with this viewing. I think I would give it 4. I would give it 4 buckets.
Fair enough.
And again, yes, a perfect pairing with Vampires versus the Bronx.
Yeah, I agree.
But imagine the potential if we had paired it with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And now, please allow me this moment to embarrass myself, because I came up with a little jingle. Who could take a meat hook, dig it in your gut, pull out your intestines, and have a bit of honey? The Candyman can.
Good night, folks.
Jeff's been spending the week working on candy puns, and Jim's been writing a jingle. And I'm over here like writing a thesis about like social issues related to Candyman.
Welcome to TMI, folks.
Because I was trying to find a candy that would rhyme with gut. I'm like, I'm not even going to try it. Gut. Zagnut. Yes, Zagnut. Sorry.
You should have.
But no, bit of honey, the bees. I had to go bit of honey.
Yeah. That ties into. See, our candy confessional should have been this week.
Yeah.
So perfect segue.
There you go.
Our confessional this week.
Confessionals.
Are we going with a Halloween costume?
I believe that is the case, because that is my answer.
All right, then let's go. Our most fondly remembered Halloween costumes as kids. Not as adults necessarily, but as...
I do have one as an adult, but I'm very disappointed that there will not be visual evidence that we can share on social media.
I've got my stuff. My mom took a picture of my Halloween costume every year, but it's like in photo albums in New York State.
Gotcha.
So
You could have mom take a picture and send it to you.
I could if she wanted to go through every album.
Oh, well then, yeah. So, Mom, you got a week to do nothing. Oh, maybe Mom will come visit us October 24th in Wappingers.
Maybe she will.
Maybe she will. Yeah.
I doubt it. Mom's got better things to do. So who wants to go first?
You can go.
I can go first.
Jeff, please.
Okay, so I will go first. I have 2 costumes that stick out in my mind. I will say that I don't remember dressing up for Halloween a lot. We talked last week about the Ben Cooper costumes, but I don't really remember. Like, I think most of the stuff that we had was just things we had laying around the house that we just made into costumes. Now it's like I take my kids to Party City and they spend $40 on a costume. They wear it once and that's the end of it. But I want to say this was 7th or 8th grade, and there is a photo, and I have shared it on my Facebook page. I was in Boy Scouts at the time, and we had a Halloween costume party at one of the boys' house, and I decided to go as a gypsy. And so I am in full head rag. I have a skirt on. Now I'm 7 or 8 years old, and I'm completely content with this, by the way. And what we did was we had a glass ashtray, which we took a white balloon and taped to it so that I had my fortune-telling ball. And I was so proud of this costume. And of course, by the time, I'm sure my mom had, fake wigs were big, in the 70s, as well as screw-on, the clip-on earrings. And, I got there and was absolutely ridiculed for dressing as a girl. And I do remember going upstairs to this kid's house and just wanting to go home. But that sticks out in my memory because I do have a photo of it. But in high school in 1985, I came in 2nd place in a costume contest at my high school, dressed as Boy George.
Oh.
So you see a pattern already emerging.
So that trauma taught you nothing. You were
nothing. No.
set for
I doubled down. If nothing else, I doubled down. I had the hat with the ribbons. Go right to the album cover of was it Color by Numbers with Karma Chameleon, and of course that video. Gloves. I had the eyeliner going on. My mother had I can only describe this as like a one-piece sleepy suit or whatever. It was like fuzzy, but I put the Chinese symbols down the side of it, and I went loud and proud as Boy George, and I lost out to my buddy who dressed up as Dee Snider from Twisted Sister. So.
What is it? Just a pantheon of rock singers in the
I don't know.
Contest?
It was the 80s, dude. No, actually, my friend Linda, she actually either came in third, and she was a bag of jelly beans, and she just had a big plastic bag with multicolored balloons inside of it. So she was a bag of jelly beans. So those are my two top costumes that I remember as a kid, or maybe not even as a kid. But I also remember once pulling together a robot made out of boxes. And this was the saddest excuse for, people should have actually taken my candy away from me because it wasn't really much of a costume, but it doesn't matter. They still gave me candy. And those are mine.
You can go, Jeff.
Next? Okay.
Yeah.
Halloween was an opportunity for my father to vicariously live through me, because he would enter me in all the Halloween contests and then fabricate a costume. And try to get me to win the costume contests. And I think it was another, just like you said, Jeff, a robot with boxes, and he had painted it silver, and there was lights, and there was a little siren light on the top of it. And I forget who I lost to, who they were dressed as, but he was very disappointed, and so was I, because this thing was so uncomfortable to
you
wear.
Put so much work into this,
and I had to sit in it for however long. But I remember my favorite costume was one that it was a kit that he helped me apply, and it was very similar to the original Planet of the Apes makeup, where you're putting facial prosthetics over, but your face is kind of working the prosthetics. Mm-hmm. So it was like a lizard kind of a alien type thing.
Damn, that's pretty elaborate.
And it had red skin. It was a large forehead, and it was very similar to the lizard in the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh no,
kind of thing.
It was the same costume.
So it was red, but I didn't have a cap or anything. So I just had my hair. So I had a red hoodie that I put the hoodie up. So it was like a lizard / Unabomber kind of a
nice. Are we talking 7 or are we talking 14?
I was probably 11 or 12.
Okay, so you're right in between.
Right. And that one I do have pictures of. I don't remember ever seeing even a photo of the robot, but I'll look and see if I have photos of the lizard guy. But those two stand out. And I remember whenever my parents would go to a costume party, I remember one in particular where I forget what he was, but my father made a giant baby powder bottle for my mother and a squeegee on the inside. So she would squeeze it and baby powder would come up through the top of the... Now we know, of course, that it's very unhealthy to breathe this. So.
Have you been diagnosed with mesothelioma?
But I remember that as well. But other than those two, it was just like Ben Cooper all the way.
And that's what I had to when I was younger, because it was just me and my one sister who was 2 years behind me, and we had a series of those Ben Cooper costumes, and my favorite of them was Wonder Woman. I loved Wonder Woman.
Who doesn't?
I had an iron-on shirt with Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. I remember there's a picture of me at one of my birthdays. My mom made a Wonder Woman cake for me. My first underoos were Wonder Woman.
So are mine.
And I just loved Wonder Woman. But as I got older, my mom started doing these really elaborate hand-sewn costumes that she would make. Especially, I remember for my younger sisters, she would make a ladybug or a spider. She was really good with sewing machine. She would make these stuffed costumes. They're really beautiful. But that I think was sort of self-defense too, because once you have 4 kids, now you can't buy 4 costumes.
Yeah.
one costume I remember wearing, and this actually wasn't for Halloween, but this is my mom, I think, trying to show some ingenuity, some low-cost ingenuity. I was pretty young. I was going to day camp, and we had to have a costume. And so for something, special thing that day, and I said I wanted to be Chewbacca. Which of course, like, you can't really do that, on short notice. So I was very small. I'm still not very tall. And she cut out a paper bag, the neck and the arms. She put the paper bag over me. She like colored the paper bag. She took my hair and like sprayed it up so it was like crazy, sticking in all directions. And then she used her eyeliner pencil to like make hair, like fur on my face. And I was Chewbacca.
So the paper bag was like your dress?
Yeah.
You were that tiny?
I was very small. I'm only 5'2", so I never really got big.
You look much bigger on screen right now.
A normal size. This isn't a giant paper bag. A normal size grocery store.
Yeah, a normal size grocery bag.
Wow. And how old were you?
I was pretty young. I think.
Okay, all right. Say if you were going to tell us you were
8
11,
maybe, or 9. So, but I never really got big, Jeff. I stopped growing when I was 13.
Yeah, well, guess what? I'm shrinking, and I'm not happy about it at all. Very cool. All right.
So next week, we have a treat. Not only are we continuing our scary movie theme, our lineup next week is completely chosen by a listener who happens to be my wife, but that's besides the point. It is a listener.
Is it besides the point?
So both movies are chosen, and I think we were all very pleasantly surprised by our feature film next week, which will be something, again, unbelievably, we have not covered yet in all 140 episodes that we've gone through. Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. And Jeff pointed out this is the first time we're doing a Johnny Depp movie. Like, we did do Fantastic Beasts, but this is Johnny Depp in a starring role. We've not done that before. So Johnny Depp making his debut here in a featured role on TMI next week.
He's very honored, by the way.
Sleepy Hollow. I hope he is. He
should be.
And the co-feature, one of her favorite horror movies of all time, I think 77 it came out. It's called The Sentinel. And it's about a gateway to hell in a upscale apartment building. And there are so many famous actors in this movie. It is kind of mind-boggling. So if you haven't read about this or if you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to say, I don't want to spoil any surprises.
77?
77.
I might have rented the wrong one from the library.
I think it's a very common title. There's a lot more than just one Sentinel out there.
I know. Unfortunately, my library did not even come through for me this week for Candyman. I had to pay for it on
next week. Sleepy Hollow and the Sentinel.
Aaron's Choice week.
Aaron's Choice. Yes.
Yeah.
Her and Sophie.
Sentinel. I'm going to check right now. I got to make sure I got the right one. Description is: a beautiful model learns that the New York City brownstone where she rents an apartment guards the gateway into hell.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
You got it.
I guess we'll find out. Listen, I made it through Candyman, so at this point, throw whatever you got at me. I came away unscathed and a newfound appreciation for it. So, job well done. Oh, don't forget, October 24th, kids, if you're in Wappingers Falls, stop by, say hey, get some TMI swag.
Yeah. Spin the wheel.
That's right. Maybe you'll even win a free autograph book.
Well, actually, we'll spin the wheel for you.
Yes, you will not touch a wheel. You will not touch the questions. We will toss you your prize. I got hermetically sealed little goodie bags. We got some stickers, some bookmarks, some magnets. You know, it's just an excuse to get out.
Yeah.
Show people we're living life again. So. All right. Well, as always, thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you. Come back next week.
Yeah, I'll come back now here.
Bye.
Out.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast 2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
I'm gonna be, damn it. Where's my hook?